Let's now take this conversation forward, and we're joined in our Pretoria studios by political analyst Professor LesibaTeffo. Professor Teffo, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us here on the program.
Greetings to you and the listeners.
So, it's taken 9 years. 9 years later, charges against the former president reinstated. This particular decision, I imagine Abrahams was in a corner. Was this expected?
Well, I'm sure either with you or so, I did say Shaun will find it difficult not to proceed with the charges. And indeed, he found himself in a situation whereby he had to do the right thing. It's never too late to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yes. But in the circumstances, perhaps it ought to have been done much earlier, because the harm done in the 9 years of Jacob Zuma's tenure will take some time really to undo. But yes, we are on a different terrain now. Let's see what we can achieve.
Yeah. Let's just, I suppose, pose one question towards Shaun Abrahams. And I think the sentiment out there by a lot of people saying, look, we cannot even think of commending Shaun Abrahams for his decision, because this is a decision that should have been taken a long time ago, and there have been a lot of delays, and it's almost made a mockery of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Where does this leave him?
Look, thou shalt remain faithful and loyal to your conscience, and indeed the oath of office, because many will come and many will go. But Shaun Abrahams, who took an oath of office, is the one we shall always look at. And indeed, an office so important to the life of a nascent democracy, he ought to have done the right thing, because he's looked up to by many aspiring lawyers and jurists, and he has failed them dismally. I feel sorry for him at one level. He might argue that there was immense political pressure. Same could be said by Mokotedi Mpshe. But when you take that office, it says, without fear or favor, I shall execute the charges and the responsibility given to me.
Yeah. All right, let's now look at this actual decision and the reaction since then. So we've seen that the legal representative for former President Jacob Zuma, Michael Hulley, has come forward and said that the likely course of action is to take the decision on review. That's basically all that's been said so far. Where to from here? I mean, what do you think is going to do? And we talk about legal charges and legal fees. This is going to cost a lot of money for former President Jacob Zuma.
If you were not to take it on review, I would say he is inconsistent and less analyst from one we have known in over the past 9 years.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we were to take that. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, he will still have to face the law. And indeed, he will have his day in court, as he has been calling for it. He can delay, he can dilly-dally, he can duck and dive. But I think the circumstances are narrowing to a point where he will have to face the law. And indeed, I'm looking forward to that day, so that he can acquit himself, or at least present himself, and let the court pronounce. But let's give him a chance. He has asked for it. Let's nudge him towards the court until at least he can face his day.
Let's look at those charges now, because it's important that we have a look at the particular charges that we're referring to. So it's 16 charges relating, are all of them relating to the arms deal, or is it not all just to the arms deal? Because we've got 12 of fraud, 1 of racketeering, 2 of corruption, and 1 of money laundering. So let's just get a little bit of clarity on the charges that are now to be reinstated.
Yes. Well, look, the charges based on the alleged irregular payments of about 783. Okay, I don't think it's already very difficult to say one way or another the courts will find against him, precisely because, remember, in Germany there were men and women who were ready to advance evidence, and they did. In this country, There were men and women who were ready to advance. But when the so-called, what I would call almost a kangaroo commission, right, regrettably, that looked into the arms deal, right, that almost exonerated everybody. There were still men and women beyond the borders of the Republic of South Africa who said, we have got adequate information to show that the irregularities that transpired. I think people like Feinstein, men and women of integrity, who resigned from the ANC, who resigned from government, well, they realized that there were agendas inimical to justice. You will recall the chairperson of the commission, Justice Riti, had 3 to 4 colleagues of his resigning because they suspected that what he was up to, or the commission was up to, was inimical to the original intention that of had to look and seek justice in the interest of the nation.
In terms of the actual trial set to get underway in KwaZulu-Natal, I'm just reminding myself of there we go, the Director of Public Prosecutions saying that Moipone Noko is in charge, and this of course is in KwaZulu-Natal. Will this have any significance? This is of course President Jacob Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma's home province, KwaZulu-Natal.
I shall repeat myself here and say human beings follow power wherever it goes. Shaun Abrahams find it expedient now to pronounce in the manner he did. Those who are going to try Jacob Zuma, I don't want to cast aspersion. Some of them are men and women of integrity. But the environment is conducive. And I don't want to undermine political influence and the machinations that people of influence use in order to influence others, including the judiciary. So I'm confident whoever they put there as the chief prosecutor will do the right job. Remember, Jacob Zuma is less virulent now. I know for a fact that the so-called Association for Funeral Parlors in South Africa and others will try to mobilize, and he himself is likely to mobilize along ethnic extraction. But I still believe that as far as the people who are going to preside over these matters, the environment is conducive for them to do the right thing. And I just hope and wish that President Jacob Zuma is given a fair trial. He has called for this day, and the day has come. Sir, avail yourself.
Absolutely. Very quickly, Professor Teffo, it's a couple of seconds before the news. The legal fees. This is a very big sticky issue as well. This, with especially the fact that it's been said that his legal issues may be paid by the state unless, of course, he loses. Talk to us about this and your views on the payment for these legal fees.
To the extent that the matters were germane to his office, the state must pay. But in the circumstances, surely it was about him as an individual in his personal capacity. Let's make that distinction. When I execute my responsibilities within my employment, my employer will take care. But beyond that, I must take responsibility. But in the arms deal and related matters, certainly President Jacob Zuma will have to pay.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very, very much, Professor. Always a pleasure having a conversation with Professor LesibaTeffo. He is a political analyst talking to us from our Pretoria studios. The time now is 7 o'clock.